Stop what you're doing just for a second. Take a breath with me. There's so much to do in private practice and so many resources and trainings and things like that to focus on that we've brought it all together for you for a totally free event starting March 11th and going till March 14th. Level Up Week 2024 is coming up, and I want you to save that date. We have some amazing panels we're planning where we're bringing together people that have started a private practice, people that have started a group practice, and people that are rocking out mega group practices. Also, we're going to have some amazing keynotes and some trainings that are on very practical things. There's no need for you to bounce between Facebook groups wondering, is this advice good? What should I do next? I don't even know of the 50 things that I need to be working on what I should do first. Instead, come to Level Up Week. It's totally free. You can be on the early bird list over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up to get all the early notifications for when we open up registration. So again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/level up. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 960. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I hope that your first quarter is going awesome. I hope that you are figuring out what this year is going to look like, and you've set some really big goals for yourself. Often when I'm working with consulting clients, we look at what's the low-hanging fruit, because so many times if we are someone that likes big ideas and we want to change the world or improve things, we go after the shiny objects or the things that distract us. And really, we want to tighten things up in the practice first so that we can take things off of your plate. We want to add extra clinicians, add extra staff or systems so that if you are going after really big things, that you're not just more stressed from it. And that's where just getting in that back and forth of what am I taking off my plate, and then what am I going after that's bigger than what I think I can go after. And getting in that rhythm, setting time aside so you're not just getting burned out is so important. And as you look at quarter two, one thing a lot of our people in our communities are thinking about right now is summertime. Actually, it's just a few months away. A lot of practices deal with summer slump, and this is the time to do a few things to really combat that. To start talking about your clients about what is their summer going to look like. Are they going to be out of town? Do you need to do more pay-per-click advertising? Do you need to do more organic SEO, more connections with doctors or pastors or yoga teachers or whoever gives you referrals? So as you start setting your goals for quarter two, think through those things. Think through, what did last year look like? Maybe you look at July of the last 2 years and the finances, and you realize July is just always slow. Maybe that's a chance for you to give your staff a break and for you to schedule a 2-week vacation with your family. Who knows? But look ahead, start planning now for that summertime so that if you don't want the summer slump, you can be pushing into that. And if it seems like it's going to naturally just keep happening, maybe you schedule some time out of the office. Today, I'm really excited. We're talking with Dr. Benjamin Ritter, who is the founder of LFY Consulting and is an international leadership and career coach, senior talent management consultant, top career development and executive coaching voice on LinkedIn, international speakers, value geek, online instructor, and host of the Executive Podcast and the Live for Yourself Revolution podcast. Benjamin, welcome to the Practice podcast.
I am very excited to be here and love the tips around seasonality of business. And I really hope everyone listens to that because I have multiple faucets in my business and I turn them on, turn them off based on what's happening in the environment and where also I want to play. And everyone should have that if they're running their own practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing that, even for myself, last summer, I was like, man, July just dropped off financially. And when I looked at it, there was a few factors. One of them was that our podcast sponsorships, the way things were paid, July just was planned out to be a lower month. And so we didn't see as much podcast sponsor money coming in just because people would pay in 25% chunks. And then, there was less consulting and less other things. And so as I look, forward to the summertime, I'm thinking, well, if that's a trend we've seen for the last few years, I have an Airbnb property and it's the inverse. Summers are insane. So maybe I just need to spend time away from practice the practice for a little bit and, tell my team, hey, things are slowing down, or maybe we'll do extra marketing or something like that. But to me, it's just so important to look at those ups and downs that naturally occur.
Yeah, and what clients need. So, for example, I have this split of leadership coaching and career coaching and talent management consulting. So basically, we offer career coaching that puts individuals' leadership development first because it's all connected, as well as the corporate work, corporate coaching, and like larger enterprise clients, assessment work, talent design and delivery. And when the market's really hot, sometimes that career development work can slow down, but that leadership development work speeds up. And so, where can you in your business have different client niches or focals for you to then market to a little bit differently based on what's happening, what people are resonating with? And then you also just have like your general, these are people that want to work with me no matter what. And how are you going above and beyond for those clients and making sure that they know that you truly care and solidifying those relationships to build that loyalty? I mean, I have
Mm.
this like really great, really strong base of clients where we've adapted our relationship to fit the needs of what's happening in their life, but I'm now a tool in their tool belt instead of something to come and solve a problem. And they've become a huge part of my reoccurring revenue every year. And generally, they'll turn around like every 3 to 4 years. And then I have my shorter term clients, which are like 3 to 6 months. And then you have a portion which are longer. And each one of those different clients has a different need for me. And so you categorize them and then you make sure that when you meet someone that's going to be a 4 year client, you're treating them like a 4 year client instead of like a 3 month client.
Mm. Now, when you think about private practices, let's start with solo practitioners that eventually want to move into being a group practice owner. What are some of those leadership things that you think about? I know one area of expertise that you have is kind of happiness and making your work match what you want out of the world. What are some of the biggest stumbling blocks, things people screw up at that phase?
I'm going to list a couple and then give you the choice to double click into them, okay? Because
Okay.
I think there's a couple of different things that are really important. So you have this change in work that you're doing, and that change in work can actually steal the meaning away from your work. It can cause feelings of imposter syndrome. It can cause feelings of being stuck. It can cause feelings of I'm doing the wrong thing. This isn't what I need and what I wanted just because the work is changing overall. You also then now have to learn how to delegate and let go of things because you can instead also get burnt out and have a different job now. If you're not a solo practitioner anymore and you're an owner, it's very different in terms of where you should be spending your time. Like what is like the highest level of priority? What's the red thread of the day? What's the lever that you need to pull? And what do you may have to make sure that other people are doing? With that comes delegation. And so how are you appropriately training people that work for you? Building on that, do you have the leadership capabilities and skills to manage conflict internal in your organization, not just with your clients? It's very different when it comes to are you running a business and how are you focusing on performance management and development? So there's a variety of different things there. I'll even throw in just for fun another one, which is what's your plan? Where are you going? Do you have an exit plan? Do you have a succession plan? Like, or is this more so just kind of seat of your pants lifestyle business? So there's a bunch of them. Which one do you want to pick?
Yeah, I think the word that I like that you used is levers. I think frequently therapists definitely have big hearts. They often know, who they want to help. So that's maybe not as big of a challenge for them. But the kind of pulling different levers to make different things happen, I'm going to choose that option.
Okay, we're going with levers for what's behind that door. So with levers, and if you're scaling your practice, actually people can end up creating too many levers because they're trying too many different things to grow. And maybe also there are 8 things that are all working. So you're like, I have to do all 8 because we're growing and that's important. And one of the greatest mistakes people make when they are growing is trying to grow too fast and without any sort of structure or process underneath it. You can grow without structure and process, but you also increase the risk of unforeseen failure based on unmitigated risks or unforeseen circumstances or over leveraging yourself. So with levers, you actually want to reduce the number of levers that you're growing from and with, and also want to make sure that there's not just one person responsible for the levers that are part of your business and why it's growing. All of this to make sure that if there's internal conflict or someone leaves, that you're not left basically with this one aspect of your business that's not being served. And so again, this kind of idea of risk mitigation. But the lever piece is we can look at it as an income stream. So who are you getting your income from? Or we can look at it as a how are you captivating and attracting clients? So which way do we want to go right now?
I mean, I think attracting clients is always a big question.
Okay, I'm going to combine the income stream too, because I think when we think about
Yeah.
attracting clients with multiple different levers when you grow, this can come from a variety of different places. I heard in your intro, you talked about partnerships. And partnerships can be a really great asset for business owners, especially if you're trying to attract clients or creating mutually beneficial relationships. Is someone referring clients to you, or are you helping refer clients to them if possible? But when you're growing your practice, generally you have multiple different levers of clients that are coming in that are inflowing individuals into your practice. And so, based on your previous experiences, where are these clients coming from? And in general, the best client is your current client. So how can you, that's one, you can say lever per se. How are you selling to your current clients? The next best client are your past clients. So if you're growing, you need to have some level of marketing to previous clients or kind of not retention, but kind of like past benefits or new benefits to past clients. And then it's kind of new clients. And so a lot of times people tend to try to focus on who they're marketing to like who they're marketing to first tends to be a brand new client, but you have to do that. You're going over a lot of different hurdles. So how are you focusing your marketing efforts when you're growing on current clients, past clients, and then new clients, and then add in partnerships? And so I'll pause for a second because if we can create marketing plans for each of those different segments, you will tend to start building more and more momentum as you grow.
Mm. Yeah. Now, when you think about people that have been, because we started with people that are in solo going into group, the people that are already in group, how do their challenges differ from people that are just starting out in regards to leadership and creating that business that they really want to create?
And so there's more moving parts, usually. And in general, to help a group grow, you have to reduce those parts, as I mentioned before. A lot of times people think they need to add more, and really you have to actually reduce because you need if to add something. Generally, what people will do is they'll just add it to what they're currently doing, and what you need to do is find someone that's a lot better than you at it and have them do it. And so, it's a great opportunity for you when you grow your practice to actually ensure that responsibilities are delegated appropriately and other people know what those individuals are doing.
Mm.
With those
Now,
many moving
yeah.
parts, you also just lose the sight of what actually brought you meaning from your work, which tends to be the biggest issue. And then generally we forget that other people's job satisfaction matters for certain levels of engagement and productivity. We think if we grow, we'll have more of me, and more of me means XYZ. Instead, it's generally not the case. And so there's also some aspect of expectation setting and training that has to occur within those environments. But you're the main indicator, so staying motivated and engaged is going to be crucially important as you've now changed your entire job and what you've been used to.
Hmm. Stop what you're doing just for a second. Take a breath with me. There's so much to do in private practice and so many resources and trainings and things like that to focus on that we've brought it all together for you for a totally free event starting March 11th and going till March 14th. Level Up Week 2024 is coming up, and I want you to save that date. We have some amazing panels we're planning where we're bringing together people that have started a private practice, people that have started a group practice, and people that are rocking out mega group practices. Also, we're going to have some amazing keynotes and some trainings that are on very practical things. There's no need for you to bounce between Facebook groups wondering, is this advice good? What should I do next? I don't even know of the 50 things that I need to be working on what I should do first. Instead, come to Level Up Week. It's totally free. You can be on the early bird list over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up to get all the early notifications for when we open up registration. So again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/level up. Yeah, I think that's a big shift for a lot of people. They start a practice, they're bootstrapping, they're wearing multiple hats, they know how to do it, they can do it quote best. But then when they have to start to delegate, and then especially when they get to that mega group practice, over 20 to 30 people, they don't have the individual relationships with people. They sometimes don't even know who's getting hired and who's supervising them. And so when you start to get to a larger level, back in December and January, we interviewed a whole bunch of seven-figure practice owners. Um, how do you keep track of specifically because you talk about leadership and kind of the culture? How do you keep the culture that you started with, where you want to have certain values or certain ways that people operate? How do you keep that embedded in the DNA of the business as you scale to a much larger practice?
Well, you're probably not going to have the culture that you started with, because the culture that you started with may have been based on certain ways of doing business that just won't be sustainable anymore. But in order to try to craft a culture that is going to be helpful for your current business, it takes very much intention at every stage of your business. Just recently, I led a corporate values workshop. So that's where you explore, define, and align your values. You include a variety of different people from your business. Then you move that to the board and senior leadership team to finalize those values and to define them completely. But that's just the initial step, and then you have to start embedding them throughout the organization. So you embed them in hiring practices, you embed them in onboarding, you embed them in training, you embed them in performance management, so the review process. You embed them in your stand-up meetings, in your group meetings, in your one-on-ones, and you embed them in your marketing internally. And generally what happens is companies will create values, they'll be a little ambiguous, they're not defined, no one really knows what they mean. They start getting used to reinforce negative behavior, or start getting used to call out people in negative ways. And then they're not actually used intentionally during performance management or training. And so then the values start taking on a life of their own, and no one really thinks they're useful, and they actually end up start detracting from the organization overall. And I saw this in an organization where I came in to help revamp their values, and they were using a value that was kind of focused on customer everything, right? It was like the customer first. And managers were using that value as a negative to say, well, you have to stay late, you have to work overtime, you have to sacrifice this, you have to take that abuse from a customer. When in actuality, that value never meant that. And it was just being used that way to reinforce negative behaviors because managers weren't sure how to lead in a way that did serve that value. And they were reacting to the pressures of the current environment at the time. So it is very much about consistent effort and communication around in consistent communication. So consistent effort and consistent communication around around foundational work of defining those values and embedding them in the organization. And those values have already been bought in by senior leadership and by kind of those critical key leaders too.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about running meetings and moving things forward. So many clinicians that start a practice are good at the clinical side of things, and then there's this thing called the Peter Principle, where you kind of keep moving up the ladder, but you don't have the skills to move on to that next thing. When you think about leadership and people that are growing a business that maybe is so far out of their typical skill set, like, what are some essential things in leadership that people need to be developing as the leader of their company?
Mm-hmm. I just also want to mention with that values piece, because you brought up customers, how you treat your customers and how you respond to them, how you follow up with them, how you treat them when they're in front of you, how you handle complaints from those clients is also a huge representation of your value. And your values, how your customer feels about you, not just so how your clients feel about you, not just your employees, is the greatest indication of what values your company actually lives by. Okay, I had to say that. So now I'll talk about the current question, which was what are some of those general leadership skills that individuals need to be successful? Is that the main question, just to clear up context?
Yeah.
So there's three really leadership management principles. You can this is from the I think it's the what's the name of that company, like Manager Skills. It's like online, you can find it, but it's pretty relevant throughout any industry, and it's coaching, delegation, and feedback. Generally, leaders that have not led before, don't have kind of business or organizational experience, don't realize the need for delegation. We've already covered this very briefly, and there's some pieces of that I'm happy to dive into on how to actually appropriately delegate, like label things for delegation and then to train someone on a specific task. Coaching, which many people kind of don't understand the true definition. True definition of coaching is believing that someone has the answer themselves. And when someone comes to you with an issue or problem, your initial kind of feeling is to give advice to that problem. But coaching is asking questions for that person to figure out and to develop their own specific way to get to the same outcome that you're hoping that they get to, that if you were to do the work, or about 80% of that outcome. For anyone interested in learning more about coaching, I know we have practitioners on this podcast that are listening. You probably heard of this before, but there's a great TED Talk called The Advice Trap, or a book called The Advice Trap. I think the TED Talk is like The Advice Monster, and this is from the author of The Coaching Habit as well. It's incredible. It spells it out very nicely in terms of how to actually leverage questions to create a coaching relationship. And then with feedback, generally every single manager I've ever had a role play with, and we do this with our clients, we do this with our enterprise clients, we do this in our leadership development trainings. Every single manager I've ever had a feedback role play with has done it terribly. And so if you are an individual that is hiring employees, I beg you, if you do not have a coach, to get a fellow practitioner that you're friends with and practice feedback conversations. Very simple model called SBIC. It walks you through how to actually give feedback. You basically specific behavior, situation, behavior, and impact and commitment. And you can find that the Centers of Leadership has some great articles on that as well. And those three traits as a leader, if you can develop those three traits, you will be one of the top leaders someone's ever worked with before. Now, there are some like organizational structure things that we probably could talk about, but honestly, that's not my wheelhouse, right? I'm a leadership and career coach. If you're not watching your costs, you're spending more money than you're making, you're going to have some problems. But I'd like to stay on the leadership and career development side of things.
Yeah.
And this is discounting the fact that if you're not happy at work, you're eventually going to burn yourself out and lose motivation. And we tend not to take care of ourselves as our responsibilities increase outside of the leadership skills themselves.
Yeah. So you had said that in role plays, most people don't do it correctly. Like, what does that look like when they're not doing it correctly, or what should it look like when they do do that correctly?
So generally, people make mistakes when they're giving feedback because they make it personal. They bring up things that aren't part of the actual conversation, and they aren't future and development focused. So, for example, if someone's late to work, you start talking about all the times they've been late to work for the past 3 months, even though you never thought about bringing it up before. Or you call them lazy, or you say, they have to be more professional. Like you're using words that actually don't have meaning, or can be misinterpreted, or that can be an attack on somebody and make them incredibly defensive. And basically, what you're doing is causing conflict instead of giving feedback. When you're giving feedback in a really positive way, what you're doing is you're getting very specific about the situation at hand. So today, you showed up 5 minutes late. Fact, no judgment. And then you're talking about the impact of that behavior. Because of that, we had to open the office late, and now we're behind on seeing our patients, which is going to actually cause us all to stay later today, or whatever impact you want to create. And then you talk about so SBIC, and then you talk about the impact. So situation, behavior, impact. So the impact of the fact that you were late was what we just talked about. And then it's, well, what can we do about this? Because it's not something that we can continue. And I realized that my labels flew off. So situation was the person showed up late. So the situation was that person showed up late. The behavior was so the situation was earlier this morning. Behavior was this person showed up late. Impact was we got delayed in seeing patients. Now everyone has to stay over late. And then it's C, commitment is, what can we do about this to improve it moving forwards? So clarification there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Benjamin, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
That ultimately you're going to be the reason why you are able to get up and go to work or not. And no matter what happens around you, whatever occurs, you're a business owner, and nothing can happen in your life that is going to change that. So no matter what happens externally, no matter if you have a terrible month, no matter if you have a difficult client that leads to legal troubles, or no matter if you wake up and you aren't feeling like this is the right profession for you, you ultimately get to make the decision for yourself. And within you is a spark. That spark that you fed is a defining aspect of who you are. And don't forget that you have this business, so you're probably going to have another business, or you're going to grow this business, or you're going to take your entrepreneurial skills and add it to a different practice. So ultimately now you've identified some incredible strengths within you, and you can always utilize them in whatever way, shape, or form that you'd like.
So awesome. If people want to connect with you more, if they want to follow your work or your podcast, where should we send them?
Yeah, first connect with me on LinkedIn. Well, actually, first go into your podcast app, wherever you are, and leave an incredible review for this show, because Joe is an incredible host and the show adds a lot of value. It takes 2 seconds. Please do it. Pay it forward. Then share it with a friend. Then follow me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request, and let me know that you heard me here. I'm happy to start the conversation, to keep the conversation going with you. And then if you go to my website, liveforyourselfconsulting.com, you'll be able to download your free guide about creating a meaningful career. Generally, if you're feeling stuck or a little bit dissatisfied, aren't really sure on kind of what to do next or how to solve a specific problem, but a lot of it's internal and you're not really taking the action that you really need to download this guide.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, whether you are just getting started or you are growing a mega group practice and looking to do online courses and work or podcasts, we have trainings next week for you. Our Level Up Week is totally free. It's going to be all week long, Monday through Thursday. We're doing 3 to 4 webinars a day, all live. You can register over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up. So make sure you do that so that you can get those recordings. You can hang out with us. We're going to be doing a bunch of bonuses as well. And at the time of this recording, we have about $20,000 in prizes that we're giving away. So that number may grow after the time of this recording. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.